Hi, welcome to Mix and Jam, a channel about game development experimentation, and today's project is inspired by Balatro. Balatro is a deck building game that combines the thrill of high-stakes poker and the strategic decision-making of a roguelike. And besides being incredibly fun, Balatro has a pretty solid game feel. Everything from selecting, moving, and playing cards is extremely polished. So for this video, I want to show how I tried to recreate some aspects of this game feel to practice my game development skills using Unity. I started by creating a new project and adding a canvas to place all my UI elements. Then I created an object with the selectable components to represent the base card. This allowed me to create a script that can detect all of the mouse interaction interfaces, such as on pointer enter, on pointer down, and so on. As an example, the on-drag events were used to activate the mouse follow logic. Most of Balatro's gameplay happens within slots, so even though cards can freely move around, they always have a set place to go back to. The way I structured this was to have the cards always have a parent slot to which they were returned to at the end of a drag event, which in this case just means setting the card's local position to 0. Then, I created another parent object that essentially functions as a container for all the slots. And with this structure in place, it was time to start implementing the card swap behavior. I created a script for the container that would listen to all of the card interaction events. And when one specific card was being dragged, I implemented a check on every frame to see if its position on the x-axis is bigger or smaller than any of the adjacent cards. And if that's the case, it swaps the parents of the two cards and then resets the position of the one that's not being dragged. And to wrap up the basic interactions, I added a selection state on the card by using the on pointer up event, which changes the card's Y position. The general gameplay was working, but the movement itself looked very stiff. So this is when I decided to separate the logic from the actual card visual. I did this by making the base card instantiate a visual representation of it based on a prefab. I created a script for this prefab that on every frame made the visual follow the base card using interpolation. The same was applied for its rotation, that would slightly tilt towards the direction of movement. With these simple implementations, the visuals were smoothly following the base card no matter where they moved to, and this made the card swap interaction already feel pretty great. Next thing was to make sure the script was listening to all of the events from the base card, to which I added a lot of animation using do-tween, so things like the shake on hover and the position punch on selection. When the card was being dragged, I increased the visual scale and made it override its sorting order to always stay on top of all the other cards. And to replicate the same effect as the game, I added a shadow image underneath the card that would offset its Y position while being dragged, to really give the impression that this card changed perspective. Balatro also has this very nice 3D rotation effect when the cards are idle and also when you are hovering over the card. To implement this, I made sure to have an extra child object that would rotate by itself, not to interfere on the parent's transform values. And when the card is idle, I made it so that it would use a sine function on the x-axis and a cosine on the y-axis, making the card rotate on a circular path. And when the card is being hovered, I made it so that the mouse distance from the center determined the rotation values. In the game, you can notice that the player's hand has a slight curve for position and rotation, so I decided to implement that by using an animation curve that would determine the position and rotation offset. One thing I really wanted to try to replicate were the addition effects that makes cards look glossy and shiny. But to better start visualizing this, I created a custom card pixel art using the official character from the channel, JAMO. Then I created a shader to represent two card editions present in the game, Polychrome and Negative. For the Polychrome effect, I used a twirl node to generate a spiral UV that adds to the offset from a hue node, effectively changing the card's color with that pattern. Then I made it so that the card's rotation value was used for the twirl offset, allowing it to move around when the card was being rotated. The negative effect implementation was a bit similar. The main difference was that I inverted the colors from the main texture and made sure that the moving twirl was more intense on the character's art by isolating the colors into its own mask. And to add the final touches to the project, I created another shader for the general background that uses noise and more twirls to distort the texture's UV and create the game's trippy effect. I also made the game camera move ever so slightly using the noise attribute on the Cinemachine component. And to wrap it up, I added some post-processing and overlaid everything with an image of scan lines to simulate a CRT filter. And after a bit of adjustments, this is how the project turned out. If you're interested in downloading the project and checking out the code behind it, there's a link for the project's repository in the description of this video. Huge thanks to those who support me on Patreon, including these top tier supporters. And if you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing and sharing this video with friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.